You can just go to Robert Scott Bell or Google it. And beginning February 2nd, he's on every day. And he's growing in the world of health. When I looked for a show that I could sponsor and feel good about appearing on, his was the only show in this United States that was telling the truth about health. It wasn't selling out the sponsors, and it wasn't censored in any way, shape, or form. And this is what's going on in America and in the world right now, and he's a leader in this field. He just, I can't even say enough about what he knows and the guests that he has and the following that he has. Even though you could say it's under the radar, it's under the radar where you have to look for truth today. So let me introduce Robert Scott Bell.
Thank you, Scott Kennedy. Thank you to the 10th Amendment Center and Nullify Now. And really, to the credit, we need companies that are doing the right thing, doing well to support this movement. There are a lot of you, but there are not a lot of companies out there that actually stand up with the courage of Scott Kennedy and pharmacy. And I also want to say special thanks to Southern Silver for also making this possible for me to be here. So I'm honored to be here, in fact. My name is Robert Scott Bell. I'm here, I'm alive because of nullification. I'm telling you, nullification is a matter of life and death. You may have never heard the word before unless you did a lot of reading about Thomas Jefferson, and I didn't even realize I was alive because of nullification until I looked back at my own history. I was born in the 1960s when the doctors were demigods. Some of you maybe still think they are, probably not in this crowd. They're licensed representatives of the state and Big Pharma who has purchased special privileges, titles of nobility. No, which one is it? That's what a license is. You must ask permission to do that which, well, healing is your birthright. On my radio show, I remind everybody that the power to heal is theirs, it is yours, it is mine. It is not something we need to seek permission to have or to get. We don't need to petition government for it. However, many of us have been raised where we have a government that has run roughshod over the rights of the states and the people. Yet it was the states and the people that created that federal government. Now there's something on planet Earth called the law of cause and effect in physics. And Jesus said, as ye sow, so shall ye reap. Is there an exception for government? Because the illusion is we can do whatever we want as long as we're in a government situation or even an artificial creation of the state. That's a corporation. We can do whatever the heck we want. There is no, somebody say, karmic retribution. Because we are shielded from liability. That is the biggest fallacy that can only be held by someone with such a low level of maturity. We would have to call them immature, and that would be kind. But those people in Washington, D.C., by and large, maybe with rare exceptions, someone like Congressman Ron Paul has been doing it for years, don't seem to think that the laws of nature apply to them. Do we have to suffer equally? Medically, do we have to beg the government once we may have cancer because of our own lack of understanding that we have a constitution, we have to feed it, we have to pull out the pollutants that damage it? Would we end up one day maybe with cancer like my grandparents, like my aunts and uncles in their 50s and 60s? I would not be alive today in my 40s, thriving, much less alive, had I not made the changes that I made to nullify the federal government. I did what they said is not allowed. It's against the law. It's illegal. I can bring healing to you, not because I'm any more special or knowledgeable per se, I guess you could call it that, but I think I listened. And I think that's why we're in a heap of pain right now, because we haven't been listening. I mean, we can, what they say, curse the darkness or turn on the light, right? The suffering that I went through, I've embraced. I mean, my God, if I didn't suffer the way I did with all the ailments I didn't even mention, I could not learn what I have learned today. And our founding fathers, the framers of the Constitution, suffered immensely, as you know from history, for what they did, the Declaration of Independence and what followed, so that we would have the blessings of liberty. And we don't have to ask permission. We never had to ask permission. If there wasn't a Declaration of Independence, would that suddenly mean you don't have any rights? If they didn't have a Bill of Rights, would that mean those rights didn't exist? Did the Bill of Rights even grant you any rights? Absolutely not. All of those things were designed to limit the government so that it would not infringe upon those rights, and they didn't write them all in there, as you know. Our birthright is not only in healing, which is of course a big passion of mine, but it is in freedom. But we can't force the world to live free any more than the federal government can force us to be free, because, well, let's face it, it's the opposite that they're trying to do by gunpoint.
Don't hear about this wonderful approach to dealing with an out-of-control federal government is a problem with the establishment itself, and we're here today to correct that problem, are we not? The roadmap of nullification doesn't require the establishment, and that's the beauty. I have right here a list of what is happening today without the permission of the powers that be. We sit at the top of the political food chain in the American system of government, not the Supreme Court. So elected officials, like the newly elected governor of Pennsylvania, for instance, who views the Supreme Court as the highest authority in the land, have got another thing coming. The states created the federal government, not the other way around. I'm sure you've heard that at least a couple times already today. And that is the basis for all of this. That's the way the Constitution was set up. The federal government is our agent. And as a people, we have not followed our duty to make sure that our employee, the federal government, stays within the carefully defined parameters set forth by the Constitution of the United States.
Of the time, you got good odds. So the essential question of our day, and probably every day, is what do we do about it? Do we march on Washington, D.C. and ask or demand that federal politicians limit federal power?
Again?
Do we go to a federal court in the hopes that some federal judge will limit federal power?
Again?
Do we vote the bums out?
Again?
And hope that the new bums will say, well, I don't want all this power you gave me on a silver platter. Well, Thomas Jefferson gave us the answer. You heard what Derek had to say. He said, whensoever the general government assumes undelegated powers, a nullification of the act is the rightful remedy. Notice he didn't say, when they try to force you to buy some healthcare plan, march on DC and then maybe sue them in their courts and then vote some bums out and then nullify the law. No, he said every single time that Washington, D.C. does something it's not supposed to do, it's our duty to stand up, say no, reject, and nullify on a state level every single one of those actions.
That's still
a lot of legislation. I did. I vetoed 750 bills. I would have had thousands of line item vetoes, and only 2 of them were overridden. So it really made a huge difference when it came to billions of dollars worth of spending. Now, I also have to tell you that just saying no doesn't fly. It doesn't. And you got to have a reason for the no. And the reasons really were always, do we really need to spend this amount of money addressing a problem that is real, but are we going to actually impact the problem in any way whatsoever? And do we need to spend this amount of money? I mean, kind of in a nutshell, that was always the argument. Growing government to solve problems, spending money to solve problems that, we've grown up our whole lives and know that spending this kind of money really doesn't make a difference. But I took that debate on. I took that discussion on. And the state's 2-to-1 Democrat It got played out on the front page of the newspaper. It got played out on television. What's Johnson vetoing today and why? I think what speaks volumes is the fact that I got reelected. I got reelected by a bigger margin the second time than I got elected the first time by having rendered that many vetoes. And I will also tell you that a third of the legislature was Republican. A third of all my vetoes were of Republican bills. Because Republicans seem to grow government just like Democrats, only Republicans did it in a good way. They did it in a good way that was going to spend money now, but actually end up saving money later on. I never really got that. I never got it. I just vetoed the legislation. And then I think I vetoed, this is not official, but I think I vetoed 100 bills where the vote in the legislature was 117-0. And I vetoed the legislation, and the vetoes got upheld, and I would just tell the Republicans, look, I know that you were pressed for time. You probably really didn't get to read the legislation, but I did, and here's what it says, and here's what it's going to spend money on, and I don't really think it's going to make a difference. So override if you want, but here's my reasons. And it didn't get overridden. So again, it really, I think it made a huge difference. I think it made a huge difference.